Hey everyone, and welcome to Rubin'S MindLab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why sometimes when you are trying to remember something important, it feels like your brain just stops working, like there is a fuzzy wall between you and the memory? Well, this new study dives deep into what might be causing that. This research looked at something called divided attention. Basically, your brain's ability to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. You know, when you are trying to remember something while also doing something else, like listening to a podcast while driving. The big question here is how much does that something else actually mess with your ability to remember? Scientists have long debated if attention is super important when we're trying to pull memories out of our brain. We know it is really important when we're first learning things, like when we encode information. But retrieval, the actual act of remembering, that is more of a mystery. To figure this out, researchers looked at tons of studies that used a trick called the divided attention paradigm. Imagine you have two tasks. In one condition, you do each task by itself. In another condition, you are doing both at the same time. If you do worse when you are doing both at the same time, it suggests that those two tasks rely on the same mental resources, like attention. So, what these scientists did was amazing. They gathered information from 64 different studies, which included over 200 individual experiments. That's a lot of brain power and a lot of data. They wanted to see across all these studies what the general pattern was when people tried to remember things while also doing something else with their attention. And guess what they found? It turns out that when your attention is divided during memory retrieval, it reliably messes up both your memory and whatever else you were trying to do at the same time. So, if you're trying to recall a name while listening to music, both remembering the name and enjoying the music might suffer. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. It wasn't just a blanket attention interferes with memory. They found some important details. For instance, if you were trying to vividly remember an event with all its details and context, that is called recollection, dividing your attention hurt that a lot more than if you were just trying to recognize something as familiar. Like recalling if you've seen an object before. Another key finding was about the type of information you were dealing with. If the thing you were trying to remember and the other task you were doing involved similar types of information, like both involving words, then dividing your attention caused more problems. It seems like our brains have a harder time juggling similar information when our attention is split. Interestingly, they also noticed that when attention was divided during memory retrieval, the performance on the other task, the perceptual one, often suffered even more than the memory task itself. This suggests a kind of trade-off where your brain has to pick its battles when it is stretched thin. But here is the really surprising part. Even when memory retrieval just involved familiarity, or when the memory task and the other task had completely different kinds of information, there were still noticeable dips in performance when attention was divided. This suggests that maybe attention is involved in memory retrieval more often than we used to think, even in situations we believed were automatic. So, what does this all mean? It means that memory retrieval, the simple act of remembering, actually relies on attention. It is not just about encoding new information into your brain. It seems that when you are pulling old information out, your brain needs focus. The more you try to do other things at the same time, the more likely you are to stumble. To get these results, the researchers looked at a large number of studies that used this divided attention technique. They collected data on how well participants performed on memory tasks and other tasks when they were focusing on just one versus when they were trying to do both at the same time. They had strict rules for which studies they would include. For example, the memories had to be encoded when participants were paying full attention, and the participants had to be young, healthy adults. This helps make sure the findings are consistent. Then they dug into the details of each study, coding things like the type of memory task, whether the information in the two tasks was similar or different, and whether the second task required holding information in mind. These factors, called moderators, help explain why attention might have a bigger or smaller effect. Specifically, they looked at whether the content was similar or different between the memory task and the concurrent task. They also checked if the memory task involved more detailed recollection or just simple familiarity, and they examined if the second task required holding information in working memory. They used fancy statistical methods to combine all this data. Imagine you have hundreds of little pieces of information. They used powerful tools to see the overall picture and how different factors change that picture. First, they did an overall check, what they call an omnibus analysis, to see if there was any effect of divided attention at all. And yes, there was. It consistently made both memory and other tasks worse. This table shows that across the board, performance went down when attention was divided. This was true for memory accuracy, memory speed, perceptual accuracy, and perceptual speed. This confirms that memory retrieval isn't immune to attentional demands. Then, they did something smart called a P-curve analysis. Think of p-values as like a flukometer. A low p-value means the result is probably not just a random fluke. This analysis helps them check if the results they found are real, or if they might be due to researchers only publishing studies that happen to show a significant effect. The results here suggest their findings are reliable. This figure really gives you a visual idea of the impact. You can see that for all the different things they measured memory accuracy, memory speed, perceptual accuracy, perceptual speed divided attention consistently led to worse performance. Remember those moderators we talked about? They then tested if these factors changed the size of the divided attention effect. As predicted, they found that divided attention had a bigger impact on perceptual performance than on memory recall. But this was only for accuracy, not for how fast people responded. This finding about content similarity was really strong too, when the memory task and the second task used similar types of information. Like both being words, the attention cost was much higher. This is shown clearly here, with higher bars for the same content condition in figure 2. This figure really highlights how content similarity matters. See how the bars are higher when the content was the same across the tasks for memory accuracy and perception accuracy. That means dividing attention hurt performance more in those cases. And as the introduction hinted, they confirmed that tasks requiring deeper recollection, like vividly recalling an event, were more affected by divided attention than tasks that just asks for familiarity. This is shown in figure 2D, where the Reiki condition has a greater effect than the FAM condition. This table breaks down that finding. For memory accuracy, the recollection condition shows a larger effect size and a significant difference compared to the FAM familiarity condition. Now, one of their predictions didn't pan out exactly as expected. They thought that if the secondary task required holding information in your working memory, it would interfere more. But actually, they found the opposite, or at least no significant difference. This suggests that maybe working memory isn't the main bottleneck for this kind of interference. Beyond their main predictions, they also looked at other factors like the type of memory task or the type of perceptual task. And then they did some really advanced analysis, putting all these factors together to see which ones were the strongest predictors of how much attention affected memory. This table shows how multiple factors work together. You can see that even when they accounted for everything else, things like content similarity and recollection demand still played a significant role in how much divided attention affected memory accuracy. So, to wrap it all up, what is the big takeaway? This meta-analysis provides really strong evidence that paying attention is crucial for remembering things. It is not just something that helps you learn, but also something that helps you recall, even when you think you are just doing something automatic, or when the information seems unrelated. Dividing your attention can still hurt your memory. This suggests that retrieval itself is an active, attention-demanding process. It's like your brain has to actively search and select the right memory, and that takes focus. The researchers also touch on what this means for the brain. They point to areas like the parietal cortex being involved in both attention and memory. The trade-off they found between perception and memory suggests that these systems might be competing for the same limited attentional resources. And that surprise, finding that attention still matters even when familiarity is taxed and content doesn't overlap, that is a big deal. It means our old ideas about when attention is needed for retrieval might have been too narrow. Now, it is important to note that the authors were super transparent. They pre-registered their predictions and made their data and code available. This is fantastic because it means other scientists can check their work and build on it. What I find really compelling about this research is how it helps us understand those frustrating moments when we just can't recall something. It is not necessarily that the memory is gone forever, but that our ability to access it is being hindered by a lack of focused attention. Think about trying to remember someone's name at a noisy party. The noise, the multiple conversations, the general sensory overload, all of that is dividing your attention, making it harder to pull that name from your memory bank. Of course, like any study, there are limitations. This meta-analysis relies on the quality of the original studies. And while they focused on young, healthy adults, we know that attention and memory can behave differently in other age groups or in people with certain cognitive conditions. The researchers also noted that they excluded studies looking at emotional content, which is a huge part of memory for many people. But overall, this is a massive piece of work that really solidifies the link between attention and memory retrieval. It tells us that when we really need to remember something, it's best to minimize distractions. Whether it is studying for an exam, recalling important instructions, or just trying to remember where you put your keys, giving your brain your full, undivided attention is likely the key to success. It's a reminder that our cognitive resources are finite and using them wisely is crucial. What do you all think? Does this research resonate with your own experiences of trying to remember things? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to Rubin's MindLab for more amazing science, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching.